Do you like mysteries? To wander through the enigmatic mist of the inexplicable? Great. I'm Merc, and here you'll find what you're looking for. Welcome to my domains. The truth dissolves into the mist.
Amidst the dense forests and mist-covered valleys of Kentucky, there exists an object that defies logic and the very nature of death itself. An artifact kept under lock and key, not to protect the living, but to prevent something even darker from escaping. Imagine an ancient glass jar, covered by a thin layer of dust, resting under a dim, yellowish light. Inside it, there are no jewels or historical documents. There is a hand, a mummified hand, contorted into a position that resembles a gesture of eternal agony. But what makes the sight of it truly disturbing is what covers it: thick, dark, irregular hairs sprouting from the shriveled skin like weeds on cursed soil. This is the haunted hand, the most feared relic in Kentucky, an object that carries a curse as old as the region's own dark foundation. And you, viewer, if you were standing before it now, would you feel that itch on the back of your neck, that primal sensation that something is wrong? For know this, looking at it is already a risk, but touching it, disrespecting it, or trying to possess it, well, legend says that is a death sentence. To understand the horror surrounding this hand, we must go back to the 19th century, to a time when Kentucky was still a wild frontier, where law was often enforced at the barrel of a gun, and the fear of the devil was as real as the fear of starvation. It was in this cauldron of superstition and violence that the story of this hand's original owner began to be written. A story never fully recorded in official books, but one that survives through whispers and testimonies passed down through generations. The tale goes that a man, a stranger passing through a small community, was accused of the most serious crime one could commit in that era: witchcraft. The details of his alleged offense vary depending on who tells the story. Some say he could control the animals of the forest. Others swear he uttered curses that made cattle sicken and crops rot overnight. What is known for certain is that fear took hold of the residents, and fear, as always, blinds reason. The man was captured, summarily judged by a vigilante court, and sentenced to death. The execution, however, was not ordinary, for those who condemned him wanted more than his death. They wanted to erase any trace of what they believed to be a demonic pact. The sentence was brutal, and after his death, one of the executioners, driven by a mix of curiosity and a morbid desire to possess a piece of the power they feared, took the executed man's hand for himself. And it was from that moment that the true story of the curse began. The executioner, the one who had acted with such cruelty, became the artifact's first victim. Within weeks, his home was overrun by an inexplicable infestation of insects. His animals died without apparent cause, and he himself began to have visions. Shadows moving in the dark, whispers calling his name during the night. His end was tragic and abrupt, an accident so bizarre that the residents of the region, overcome with panic, began to treat the hand not as a trophy, but as a cursed relic, something that needed to be contained, but could not be destroyed. For decades, the haunted hand passed from hand to hand, always followed by a trail of misfortune and death, a kind of wandering curse that refused to rest. Each owner invariably tried to get rid of it, but the artifact always found a way to return, as if it were tied to the very soil of Kentucky. Until, in an effort to finally contain its influence, it was donated to a local museum, a place that committed to keeping it under very specific conditions. Isolated in a special display case, away from human contact. And for a long time, the museum served as a kind of prison for the relic. It became an attraction, a morbid curiosity drawing visitors from all corners, but always with a warning: look, but do not touch. Apparently, the danger was contained, the curse dormant. But then, something happened in 2026, an event that would awaken the sleeping beast and bring terror back to the surface. A violent storm, the kind that rips through the Kentucky skies with lightning and winds that seem to have a life of their own, struck the region. The museum, an old sturdy building, suffered structural damage. The power failed, and in the darkness something happened in the room where the hand was displayed. When the staff returned the next morning, the scene was devastating. Part of the ceiling had collapsed, debris scattered everywhere, and among it, the display case holding the haunted hand was shattered. The relic had been damaged. Its glass casing, its last protective barrier, was broken. And from that moment, something changed in the museum's atmosphere. It was not merely an isolated incident. It was the opening of a door that should have remained locked. Employees began to report something the museum's archives had never recorded before: nighttime visions. The security guards, men accustomed to the solitude of museum nights, began to refuse to make rounds alone. They described peripheral figures, quick movements in dark hallways, shadows that did not obey the direction of the light. One of them, in an account that was suppressed by management, swore he saw the hand itself, the haunted hand, not inside its new containment case, but resting on the edge of a shelf, as if moving under its own power. The noises became constant: footsteps on the upper floor when everyone knew no one was there, knocking on the walls, and, most disturbing of all, whispers. Whispers that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once, an ancient guttural language that no one could translate, but that made the blood run cold in the veins of those who heard it. The museum tried to control the situation. Of course, scientists were contacted, but strangely, none seemed willing to engage in an in-depth analysis. The object, despite its fame, has never been conclusively analyzed by experts. Some say the few researchers who showed serious interest in studying its composition gave up after suffering inexplicable domestic accidents or after receiving veiled threats that could not be traced. The origin of the hand, its exact composition, and the material covering those hairs remain an absolute mystery. Is it truly what the legend claims, the hand of a man executed for witchcraft? Or is there something even more primitive, older, and more dangerous connected to this fragment of mummified flesh? The museum deals with recent events, with staff morale in shambles, and with the scientific community's reluctance to come near. A new danger emerges from the shadows. Because if the legend is correct and the curse is real, the mere damage done to the relic may be just the beginning of something far greater. The story of the haunted hand seems to have entered a new and dangerous chapter after the storm of 2026. The damage to its display case was not merely material damage. It was the breaking of a seal that had long kept something contained. And now, the reports emerging from the museum are no longer just about scares or noises. They begin to draw a darker pattern, a behavior that directly echoes the curse's origins. What is happening inside there, in the hours when the gates close and the lights go out, defies any rational explanation. And if you are watching us now, if you feel that twinge of morbid curiosity, I ask you, how far would you go to uncover the truth about an object that nature itself seems to reject? The museum employees, those who had the courage or the recklessness to stay on the job after the incidents, began to report a curious phenomenon: a sudden localized drop in temperature in the hallway where the hand is kept. Thermometers register drops of up to 10 degrees in a matter of seconds, a phenomenon no air conditioning system could replicate. It is as if the environment itself is reacting to the relic's presence, as if the air becomes thicker, heavier, as if charged with a somber expectation. The security cameras, a crucial point in this investigation, began to show anomalies. At certain times, usually between 3 and 4 in the morning, The system registers inexplicable failures. The images become grainy, distorted, and in some frames, captured before the system fully crashes. It is possible to see, according to reports from technicians who refuse to make the recordings public, dark, amorphous shapes moving toward the location where the hand is displayed, shapes that do not correspond to any employee or visitor. One of the guards, who asked for his identity to be protected for fear of retaliation or of being seen as crazy, gave a startling account. One night, during one of his rounds, he felt such a strong presence behind him that his survival instinct screamed at him not to turn around. He said the air became impregnated with a nauseating odor, a mix of damp earth, decaying flesh, and a sweet, sickly perfume that seemed to come from flowers that should not exist in that place. He stood paralyzed for a long minute, until the weight in the air subsided and he could run to the security room. When they reviewed the footage, the cameras in the hallway where he had been had failed precisely during that interval. What was behind him? What watched him from the shadows? No one knows. But he resigned the next morning, and to this day refuses to speak about the matter with anyone outside his absolute trust. And here is the most disturbing point: the pattern connecting current events to the ancient legends about the executed man, the fatal accidents. Legend has always said that those who disrespect or try to steal the hand suffer fatal accidents. In recent months, since the damage caused by the storm, 3 people connected to the museum have suffered serious accidents. An archivist who was digitizing documents about the hand's origins suffered a fall at home, breaking his leg and his right hand. A maintenance technician called to repair the damaged structure in the relics room had his car destroyed by an electrical fire while driving, escaping by inches. And the most severe case, a visitor who, during a special nighttime tour, managed to bypass security and touched the surface of the new casing protecting the hand. He reportedly told friends he wanted to feel the object's energy. A week later, he was found in his home in a catatonic state of shock, unable to speak or move, with his hands contracted into a position doctors described as cadaveric rigidity, a condition they said usually only occurs in lifeless bodies. The museum, pressured by public opinion and growing fear among staff, took extreme measures. The room housing the haunted hand was permanently closed to visitors. A brick wall was erected over the entrance, and only the museum director and a hand-picked security guard possessed the keys to access the location, something they reportedly refused to do. But the mystery persists and deepens. Why has the scientific community always kept its distance? Why has there never been a conclusive study on the composition of the hairs, on the dating of the tissue, or on the artifact's true origin? There are rumors that in the 1950s and 1980s, 2 attempts were made by universities to analyze the hand. In both cases, the lead researchers suffered devastating personal setbacks that led them to abandon the projects and destroy all their notes. Some speculate the artifact is not merely a relic from a man accused of witchcraft, but rather a fragment of something far older, perhaps an object from pre-Columbian rituals, or something not even from this world. The hairs, which defy natural decomposition, have never been identified as being of human or known animal origin. They possess a structure that, according to an unconfirmed account from a lab technician who had access to a sample in the 1980s, reacts to heat and light in an anomalous way, as if possessing a consciousness of its own. The question hanging in the air, as heavy as the atmosphere in that room sealed behind the bricks, is this: what happens now? The relic was damaged, its barrier was broken, and the inexplicable events are intensifying. The curse, once a legend told in whispers, has become a tangible reality for those who cross the path of the haunted hand. Kit remains there, inside its new walls of brick, waiting for the next disrespect, the next curious soul who challenges the warning, the next one who doubts the power it holds. Because if there is one lesson to be drawn from the centuries of this relic's history, it is that the haunted hand does not forgive. It does not forget, and it is always lurking, ready to claim one more soul for its eternal torment. The Kentucky Museum tries to move forward, but fear has already seeped into its walls. The story of the haunted hand is a dark reminder that there are forces in this world our science cannot explain and our reason cannot control, and as long as it remains there, silent and hairy, waiting within its brick prison, the curse continues to live, awaiting the moment to manifest once more. If you ever visit Kentucky, you might pass by that museum and feel a shiver for no apparent reason. You might glance at the second-floor window where the room is sealed, and for an instant, just an instant, swear you saw a quick movement, a dark shadow pulling away from the glass. If that happens, no matter how much your curiosity screams, no matter how much your rational mind tries to find an explanation, do only one thing: turn your back and walk away. Because some doors, once opened, can never be closed again, and some objects, no matter how inert they may seem, are never truly dead.
Did you like this mystery? And what is your theory? Leave your thoughts in the comments. And if you enjoyed it, then like and share. I'm Merc, and I'll be waiting for you in the next mystery.